Before I get to this week's guest, are you asking yourself, is my husband hiding money? If you suspect he might be keeping secrets, including financial ones, let's go over 4 things to do. So number 1, recognize the signs of financial deception. Is it hard for you to know exactly what he's doing or where he is? Or when he accounts for his time, is there something about it that seems kind of off? Number 2, do your homework and keep good records, including a journal. If you suspect that your husband is lying to you about finances or anything else, keep a journal of your suspicions and conversations. That will help cut through his manipulation and gaslighting. And then, of course, looking over bank statements, seeing if you can notice unusual transactions or missing funds. Number 3, don't talk to your husband about your suspicions until you know for sure what's going on. If he is lying to you about money, he knows he's lying to you, so talking to him isn't going to help the situation. In fact, unbeknownst to you, it will likely give him an opportunity to lie more and groom you and maybe keep you in the dark longer. So to figure out if he's lying to you, the living free strategies will enable you to see what's really going on without you needing to have a conversation with him. And number 4, and this is the most important, lying about money is a form of control. It's a domestic abuse issue because lying steals your power and limits your independence and freedom. If he is lying to you about money, this is a domestic abuse issue, and you need to start prioritizing your emotional and psychological safety. We have our online group sessions where women can meet and talk about their suspicions and learn what to do to protect themselves. Check out the group session schedule at btr.org/group. We'd love to see you in a session today. I have Victoria Ellen on today's episode. A Hulu show called Scam Goddess highlighted her story in Season 1, Episode 6, The Royal Racket. Although Victoria looks like a successful career woman, she led a difficult life. Behind the scenes, she spent more than a decade relentlessly pursuing justice for her children in a battle that led to the Ohio Supreme Court and beyond. When she was married to him, her ex-husband lied about everything, including hiding money. And after her divorce, she found out that he had been committing fraud. She and her children spent years in therapy to overcome the trauma they endured. After traveling that bumpy road, Victoria became an award-winning businesswoman, a happily married wife, and a proud mother to 2 thriving college students. She's here to share some of her story. Welcome, Victoria.
Thank you, Anne. Thank you so much for having me.
So you wrote your experience in your book, Painting in the Rain, a true story of trickery and triumph. How courageous of you to put your story to paper. In fact, you have a Hulu episode about your story. Scam Goddess, Season 1, Episode 6. It's called The Royal Racket. Can you talk about why you wanted to share your story?
Yes, I just wanted to help other people. I had struggled for years and felt very alone and really didn't know which way to turn. I was hoping that if I shared my memoir, perhaps I could maybe help others that were struggling through their journey to freedom. When I first met my ex husband, I was very young. I was 19 years old, very impressionable. He was 20, so we were just young and in love. He was Mr. Charisma, liked by everyone, fun, outgoing, seemed to have the world by the tail. We were both very involved in church. My world was school, church, and family all growing up, and it didn't really change once I met him. And I would say now, looking back, cult like behavior. He ended up starting his own cult after I had divorced him. But, early on, everything was happy go lucky, really just swept me off my feet with the love bombing and how wonderful he was going to treat me and how God told him I was going to be his wife.
When did you start to notice that something was off? And how did you define it at the time, not knowing what you were really dealing with? Like, did you ever wonder, is my husband hiding money or hiding anything else?
It was actually my mother who started seeing some red flags and was very concerned for me. The controlling behavior started very early on. Lots of secrets, but I had never been in a serious relationship like this. And so I really wasn't thinking, oh my these are big red flags. I was just thinking, like, oh, this is new. And there was a lot of emotion tied around it because I am white, I'm a Caucasian woman, and he was an African American man. And I was raised in a very rural area in Ohio in the 90s. And even then, you didn't see a lot of biracial, interracial dating. So a lot of people had opinions about that. And I wasn't sure if people were really genuinely concerned about me, if my red flags were valid, or if it was all just rubbish because he was black, I was white, and the rest is just left out there for people to make their own story about.
Mm-hmm.
But, I was completely under the spell. I drank the poison and I was in full blown deception land
Mm-hmm.
and didn't listen to anyone, unfortunately. I ended up pregnant while we were dating, and I pulled away from him during my second trimester because the first trimester just seemed like a whirlwind, and I really couldn't think. I had everyone telling me what I should do with my life. I had no idea what I should do with my life. And so I really tried to just take a moment to step away and get clear. I started thinking, like, this isn't normal. This isn't right. There's a lot of things here that are concerning to me. But he started slowly working his way back, sending gifts, sending cards, how much he wanted to see the ultrasounds and checking on the baby. It looked like, oh, I just want to take care of you and the baby. And I don't want you to have to worry about anything. And I don't want you to have to work or do anything outside the home. I just want you to stay with our child. And it all seemed like, oh, this is the wholesome American family dream. Like, we're going to get married and have a family and live happily ever after. So I let him back in the last trimester and quickly whisked me off to get married. And after I married, I mean, immediately, within days, I found out and that I had made the wrong decision. He was extremely controlling. Every single area of my life was controlled. I was not allowed to speak on the phone with my family without supervision from him. I wasn't allowed to leave the home. My keys were often hidden, so I couldn't hop in the car and go somewhere. Um, my circle was very small. He controlled every area of my life down to what I ate, whether or not I could open the drapes on the windows and just let some sunshine in. Really disgusting, despicable behavior. My last ditch effort was to go to our pastor and asked her to meet with us because I was planning on an escape. I just didn't know quite how I was going to do it. And I thought maybe she would be able to help us. We were in financial shambles, and the church did help us dig our way out. I wasn't thinking, this is my husband stealing money. It was gone. He did not like the fact that I, ousted him.
Oh, I am so sorry. It's so hard to go for help and it makes things worse. Because everyone will tell a victim that therapy will help or clergy can help him see the light, so to speak. And even if his behavior does change, generally speaking, she'll find out later that it was just continued lies. So the likelihood of that being grooming is like 100 billion%. The Living Free workshop talks about what to do so that you can get help and
Absolutely.
why it's so important to follow those strategies to keep yourself safe. You can learn more about it at btr.org/livingfree. Did you discover any other abusive behavior like pornography use or soliciting prostitutes?
Yeah, so pornography was definitely an issue in our marriage. He was a bodybuilder and he ended up doing some air quotes modeling with soft porn. And of course, when I called him out on it, I was crazy and insecure. And with the abuse, of course, mental, emotional, physical, sexual abuse, check all the boxes, as well as my son started displaying signs of sexual abuse as a 2 year old, and I was pregnant with our second child. And I'm sad to say that the justice system is in need of huge, massive reform. I was involved in a custody battle initially for 3.5 years as a single mother with those two children, fighting relentlessly to protect them because they were being sexually abused. And the judge was clearly swayed in his favor. She really seemed to have a personal affection for him, which was very odd in our case, and was not able to get her moved off of it. He was gone for about 10 years after that initial 3.5 years in litigation with the custody and the courts. When he came back, he wanted to reestablish parenting time. This started the next 7 years of litigation. So we were involved in three different court cases. One, I ended up representing myself as my own attorney in domestic relations court. A second case where my current husband had filed for adoption of the children. My husband won at the local level. My ex husband appealed it. It went to the 12th District Court of Appeals. My husband won the right to adopt again at the 12th District Court of Appeals. My ex husband appealed it again. Now, the Supreme Court, the state of Ohio, they take 7% of the cases. Okay. So 93% of the time, your case will not get taken. We thought that those odds were pretty darn good, but my story is so crazy. They ended up taking the case and ended up ruling again in favor of my husband to adopt the children, although they wrote new case law in the state of Ohio specifically regarding this case. And the third case that we had was a 2-week federal trial that I actually worked with the Secret Service and with US district attorneys to bring justice to my ex husband. So we had 3 court cases going for 7 years. Arduous to say the least. I was sentenced to jail because my children refused to visit with their father, who was their sexual perpetrator.
Mhm.
I had children's services investigations. I had police reports. I had detectives who investigated and interviewed these children, and still could not get the justice system to do what was right. This sheds a little light in on why I am so adamant about bringing light to what happens in the court system and why we need reform. I mean, 10 years in litigation, it really took a toll on all of us.
Mhm.
I think a lot of people operate out of fear because the courts tell them you're going to go to jail and we're going to take the kids away from you. So it does cause you to think you have to send your children to do these visits or else. And I was at a point where my children's well being was paramount. I would be one of those people that left the country, shaved my head, took on a new alias, and started a new life because I refused to send my children back into the lion's den with their perpetrators. My son had 6 sexual perpetrators by the time he was 6 years old.
Oh, so sorry.
Once they articulated who their perpetrators were, they were old enough to tell investigators who it was and explain in detail what had been happening to them. The system is broken. I knew it was broken. And that's why we were tied up for so long because I refused to give up. My ex husband utilized the court system relentlessly to drag me through the mud, financially drain me, emotionally drain me, to force me to sit in a courtroom and look at him when I didn't want anything to do with him. It was sick. And we all know this now. I really believe that the court system needs to do something drastic. I don't know what type of revolution we need, but these judges and magistrates need more education on narcissism, on coercive control, on the manipulation, and the effects of it, not only on the ex, the person that's raising these children, but also on the children. I mean, they're going to grow up someday. I'm hoping that they could be successful adults and be able to contribute positively to society. But when they're dragged through the mud relentlessly over and over and over again, year after year, it's hard to raise healthy, happy adults.
Yeah. It's like abuse by the justice system. They're able to use the justice system to abuse you because you shouldn't even have to be there. You're just trying to protect your kids. The fact that you're dragged in and have to pay money to defend against nothing because you didn't do anything is crazy. It's so expensive. It's so time consuming. Having been through it myself, it is maddening
Yes.
that the courts are able to upend people's lives in this way. Just because someone is not in prison does not mean they're appropriate parent.
Correct. Absolutely. It seems like nothing matters. It doesn't matter if you sexually abuse your child, if you don't pay child support, if you're mentally abusive, physically abusive, check all the boxes, doesn't matter. The magistrate said to me, even bad parents get to see their kids. I mean, what an indictment on the judicial system.
Exactly. If I were a stranger, that stranger may be put in jail, but at the very least, no one would want that child to be in proximity to that stranger. At this point, did you also start questioning, is my husband hiding money?
My husband and I were just day and night doing recon online, trying to find any lead that we could regarding the life of my ex husband and what he might be up to. I knew that he had picked up 3 felonies for fraud in previous years, but we couldn't find anything on him, not where he was working. Cars that he was driving were not registered to him. He was driving luxurious cars, flashing a lot of very expensive jewelry, things that would lead you to believe he was financially sound or successful in some people's minds. So we just started trying to figure it out, and we kept coming up empty. And one day I reached out to one of the victims in his first court case on fraud, where he has 3 felonies. And they told me that my ex husband was using aliases, that not only was he a pastor now, but he was also posing as a prince of Ghana, Africa.
Wow.
So I used all of these aliases in Google. It was like magic trick. His face started popping up everywhere. I started finding all of these shell companies that he was operating these businesses under, and it was this magic key. And then I started gathering as much evidence as I possibly could. Finally, I knocked on enough doors and went to enough people. I put together a file and filed a motion for a new child support order. And I was the only person that had access to his financials because I had 2 children with him previously. So this was another way for us to keep pressure on him. We had been in litigation at this point like 5, 6 years. With all of this nonsense, we were just like running out of money. It was outrageous. So I'd been in court long enough that I could fumble my way through, hold my own. My husband convinced me to be my own attorney. And so I go to court and I had an exhibit book. And I worked through that exhibit book for an hour and 40 minutes. I had my ex husband on cross examination. And if you know anything about someone with narcissistic personality disorder, they absolutely love to talk about themselves. So I have a huge exhibit book that was full of pictures and documents of my ex husband. He just kept flipping through it. And he was so excited to talk about all of this and go through the exhibit books because he truly believed that this plan and this strategy he had hatched, that he was living this life for like 7 years, that it was really foolproof. He felt like, nobody's going to catch me. I'm above the law. I'll never be held accountable for anything. Everybody believes that I'm a prince, that I'm a prophet, that I'm a pastor, that I'm a CEO, a COO. Thing is like Fort Knox, it's locked up tight. Like no one can catch me. And that conceited, arrogant attitude of I'm above everyone and everything is the very thing that actually helped us win that case, because he thought that he couldn't be exposed, and he was exposing himself for an hour and 40 minutes. I literally had documentation of these businesses that he started in the state of Ohio, and he signed them Prince Daryl Adipo. So he thought, I'll just use that. It says that I'm a prince, a descendant of royalty in Africa, so I can just continue operating like this. But from the prior crime that he had committed, he wasn't even allowed to have a Series 6 or a Series 7. It's a license for financial advisors, and investment brokers would have those types of license. And he was posing as an investment broker. So you can't even get that if you are a convicted felon. I mean, he He's a pastor of a church now, which is just laughable, claiming it to be a prophet. And he's claiming that he's the COO and a COO, and he's a prince. So he's got all of this going on, and people are giving him money. So he's getting the money from the church, and then he's getting the money from the people that think that they're investing in his gold mine in Africa that doesn't even exist. They're giving him their 401k. They're selling their house, or they're taking out equity lines of credit against their house to give him money because he's promising a 30% return. That's where the Ponzi scheme comes in. He's got all of this money, and that's where all the flashy cars and the Rolexes and the diamond rings and all the things. It's like, oh, you're stealing. You're a thief. You're an imposter. That makes sense. Okay, now I get it. You didn't earn any of this. So I ordered the transcripts, and I took the file that I had been working on for the last 5 years, and I hand delivered them to the feds. And they indicted him 9 months later on 16 federal charges: fraud, conspiracy, mail fraud, wire fraud, everything to do with fraud you could possibly imagine. So it was really our mission to expose him. He's not safe. The lifestyle that he was living was absurd. And the fact that he was even pretending that he wanted time with these children was laughable, honestly, because he didn't want to have anything to do with the children. He wanted to get to me. The children would be there for visits, and he wouldn't spend time with them because they wouldn't leave with him. And any other father that had children sitting in front of them for a visit would sit down at the table and have a conversation with their children. He did not do that. If the children weren't going to get in the car and leave with him, then he didn't want to have anything to do with them. I'll see your mom in court. That's what he would say. So it's like, this doesn't have anything to do about reestablishing a relationship with your children. It has to do with control and manipulation.
Wow. That is amazing that you were able to get that evidence and turn it into the feds.
So this is just incredible. We were in a trial for 2 weeks, which is unheard of because generally defendants know that they are caught. They know that they really don't have a case. And it's pretty much closed book. It's like, you're guilty, plead guilty, and here's your sentence, you're done. So the fact that this case even went to a trial is really unheard of. This was on the tail end of COVID. There were 17 victims and witnesses through those 2 weeks. The jury found him guilty on 10 of the 16 charges. The US district attorneys ended up dropping 3 of the charges. So he was guilty on 10 charges. I was able to speak at the sentencing hearing. The US district attorneys asked me if I would be willing to say something. And there was also another victim that spoke that day. After that, the judge said he was considering an upward departure. And the rules are a little bit different in the federal court system. So there are specific time frames assigned to certain crimes. So if you commit fraud, you're supposed to get X amount of time. If you have priors, there's this formula they used basically to generate how long they think you should go to prison. Well, the US district attorneys were requesting 10 to 14 years for the crimes committed. Of course, the defendant's attorney was claiming that he shouldn't get any time because how could he pay back all of his victims, these hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars?
Oh, if he was in jail. How could he defraud other people to pay for the other people he defrauded?
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. He stole $250,000 from one man during the first case, and he never paid him back. And he was continuing to steal from people and never did a day in jail for that either. So, this isn't going to happen.
Exactly.
So the judge says, I'm looking at an upward departure, which means basically with these regulations, the defendant should get 10 to 14 years. I'm considering going above that because the crimes are so heinous and he is so despicable. You should have seen the Secret Service and federal marshals that lined up in the gallery that day to watch the circus take place. Him on the stand doubling down the fact that he was a prince and that he had a gold mine in Africa and he really was going to pay back all of his friends. They're not victims, they're his friends. It was wild. The judge literally threw the book at him and sentenced him to 20 years in federal prison.
Wow. Oh, I bet you felt so relieved.
It was surreal. I couldn't believe for the 20 years that we had fought him, he got 20 years in federal prison. And I just felt like it was a year for every year that we had been to hell and back with him.
Yeah. Can you talk about the difference in your experience with the criminal court and the civil court? Women can get protective orders. Generally speaking, sometimes it's difficult to get a protective order, but it's not as hard, I would say, to get a protective order as it is to protect your children from the abuser. Police will sometimes follow up on protective order violations or fraud, but in the civil court with custody, there is nothing, it feels like, that anybody can do to protect children from abuse. So, can you talk about the difference between those two types of courts?
Domestic relations court fails miserably when it comes to protecting children. And they continued to fail us year after year until my children were emancipated. They never did come through, ever, not one time for either child. It's just very sad. I haven't been involved with criminal courts at a local level. I've only been involved with the feds. They were serious about the law and they weren't listening to the lies, very black and white. And domestic relations courts, they're trying to take all of these different factors into consideration. And I would just really encourage anybody who's in the court system right now to document everything. I didn't have phone conversations with him. Everything was via text message because text messages are admissible for court evidence. So emails, have recordings, videos, because if you're able to document these things, people are going to start reading between the lines and see that this person isn't who they are portraying themselves to be because they really are creating their own reality. They're just telling the story. I mean, my ex husband literally created this life that was not real, did not exist, and doubled down on it. And now he's spending 20 years in federal prison because he tried to convince everybody that the lie was the truth. Unfortunately, everybody doesn't have the same opportunity that I had at the federal level. They're just dealing with local courts. And it really can be a daunting task to continuously go to court over and over again and not have your voice be heard.
Yeah, it's very discouraging. I talked to a lot of victims who've documented everything. They have proof, and that hasn't swayed the courts either. I had 40 pages of documentation, and it didn't do anything. So, strategy is so important. That's why I put the strategies in the Living Free workshop. Again, you can get more information at btr.org/livingfree. It will teach you what to do step by step so that you have the documentation, also how to use it strategically. I learned this because in my case, those 40 pages, the guardian ad litem actually used it as proof that I was trying to hurt my ex, because what other loving co-parent would document 40 pages of child abuse against their co-parent?
Oh, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
It's maddening. It's maddening. It's enough to send you over the edge. I'm not kidding. It's crazy.
I've had a lot of times like yelling and screaming in my own house by myself, not in court, but jumping up and down. How can this be happening? None of this is even like sensical in any way, shape, or form. It's so frustrating. Your story can help bring this to light. All of the women who listen to this podcast are interested in reforms in the justice system to make sure that we can protect children from abuse. I'm so glad that you're safe now. You are a warrior. You're amazing.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, it takes one to know one. And, we just have to bind together. We can't stand by and just watch evil prevail.
That's what it is. Like legit evil. They know what they're doing and they're doing it on purpose and they know they're hurting people and they don't care.
They don't care. No, absolutely. Well, when you lack empathy and compassion, what else
Mhm.
is there just to wreck people's lives? What you're doing is making a huge difference. And I appreciate you standing in the gap and helping to educate others because I didn't have anything like this when I left 25 years ago. Thank you for fighting the good fight.
Thank you so much for sharing your story.
Thank you so much for having me.